Thank you all for attending. This is the first webinar of a two-part series where we're going to talk about PRIMRE. Today's webinar is focused on some new sites and tools that we've stood up in the last year on PRIMRE. And just for a little bit of background, PRIMRE is a multi-lab project that is a partnership between the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, Sandia National Laboratory, and the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory. We have a very large team across the three laboratories, and we appreciate your attendance at today's meeting. Let's see. So today we're going to talk about what PRIMRE is, for those of you who may not already be familiar with PRIMRE and PRIMRE's role. And then we're going to focus on three knowledge hubs: MRE Software, MRE Technology Database, and Telesto. And at the end, we're going to have some time for some questions. And we would love to hear your feedback and see and hear any questions you have for us about PRIMRE in general, and also the three knowledge hubs that we're highlighting today. And just a reminder, this is part one of a two-part series. And on the second part, we will talk more about some new features that have been added to PRIMRE. On the right-hand side here, you see a screenshot of what the PRIMRE landing page looks like, and I'll talk a little bit more about PRIMRE background. So what is PRIMRE? PRIMRE is the portal and repository for information on marine renewable energy. It is intended to be a centralized access point for all information related to marine renewable energy, and we might use Marine Renewable Energy acronym MRE and Marine and Hydrokinetic MHK interchangeably throughout this presentation, and that's largely due to the fact that both terms are used extensively within the community. So PRIMRE's objective is to provide the centralized access point for all information related to marine renewable energy and MHK. And we provide that landing point on the PRIMRE landing page, and we've worked to integrate what we call a series of different knowledge hubs. The ones that are in the darker blue here you see are the currently titled knowledge hubs. That includes the MHK data repository, TETHIS and TETHIS engineering, MRE Software, the PRIMRE Technology Database, and Telesto. Like I said, today we'll be focusing on MRE Software, PRIMRE Technology Database, and Telesto. But we encourage you to please, go and view the PRIMRE site and start interacting with the PRIMRE network. So like I said, PRIMRE provides a broad access to engineering resource characterization, environmental effect information, and renewable energy projects and the goal here is to facilitate the commercial development of the MRE industry and to make sure that projects that are primarily funded from the Department of Energy, Water Power Technologies Office have a platform for dissemination. So we work with industry, with laboratories, with the other institutions that are funded from WPTO to make sure that that information has a platform and a way to be disseminated. And if it's hosted elsewhere, that we provide relevant links. As you can see on the PRIMRE landing page, we include information like MRE basics. We have terminology that we have developed in coordination with the IEC TC114 terminology definitions. We provide upcoming events, which users are able to submit. So you can see on the right-hand side the upcoming events. And if you have an event you'd like to add, all you have to do is submit it. You can see we've got, the two PRIMRE webinars listed here. Additionally, we have links to relevant MRE organizations. You can see three highlighted on the landing page: IEC, WPTO, and then the International Energy Agency, the OES effort. We also have information about STEM programs and the different WPTO-funded competitions, like the marine energy competition that you see on the right-hand side. We also provide some integration guidelines if you click on the link on the bottom, and it establishes some metadata standards. So if you have your own database and content that you would like to integrate within the PRIMRE universe and include in our PRIMRE search, we provide metadata standards that you can use so that you can interface with our platform. On our next webinar, we're going to talk about signature projects, but it's an opportunity to collect information for signature projects, which, like I said, we'll talk about during the next webinar. And lastly, we have knowledge hubs. today we're going to focus on 3 of the knowledge hubs, but I first want to give a quick overview of the top 3 that you see on this landing page, the PRIMRE Knowledge Hub's landing page. The MHK Data Repository houses data collected by the Water Power Technologies Office, funded research. It includes device testing data, research characterization data, open source codes, reports, and anything that is generated as a result of WPTO funding. TETHIS hosts over 3,200 documents. I'm sure that number has increased since we put the slide together, on environmental effects related to MRE development, and it supports the international community. So this is one that expands beyond WPTO sphere and includes OES environmental initiative as well. And then recently launched in 2019, we have TETHIS Engineering, which hosts engineering and technical aspects of MRE content, so reports, publications. We have listed here that it's 4,700 documents. I'm sure, once again, that number has increased substantially since we put this content together. But it also has a library of MRE photos that are available for third-party use. That MRE photo library will also be a topic of the upcoming webinar. So then I want to talk about the 3 knowledge hubs that we're going to highlight today. First, the MRE Technology Database, which contains information on MRE devices and companies active in the MRE field. And then launched also in 2020 is MRE Software, which is a collection of software relevant to the MRE industry, and it includes the MRE Code Hub and the PRIMRE Code Catalog, both of which I'll talk about shortly. And then lastly, also launched in 2020, is Telesto. It's a collection of information and guidance relevant for testing and measurement and data analysis for the MRE space. In terms of MRE Software, one of the knowledge hubs, like I said previously, it's a collection of MRE relevant software, includes the Code Hub and the Code Catalog. And just to distinguish between the two, the Code Hub is primarily a collection of open source MRE software that's relevant for simulating devices, processing data, analyzing environmental effects. Any software that is developed and released on an open source platform is collected within this Code Hub. The PRIMRE Code Catalog is similar, but it expands upon the software, the searchable software in the Code Hub, because it includes commercial software as well. I'll talk about both of those in a little bit, but in addition to this, MRE Software Knowledge Hub, we also try to highlight featured software. In this case, you see we've highlighted the MHKit software because it was a recently released software funded through WPTO. So to switch gears a little bit and talk about the MRE Code Hub, once again, this is the resource that is available for open source repositories of MRE software. So the goal here is to provide easy access for existing MRE repositories. So that means if Water Power Technologies Office has funded the development and release of open source software, the MRE Code Hub, which was developed by PNNL, is a platform which you can find all of that software in one place. What we do is we have a GitHub repository that mirrors in the software that is released on different platforms. It could be from GitHub, GitLab, SourceForge, and we have automatic syncing to make sure that we provide a fork of the most recent version of the software. This platform also provides full text code search. I've provided the link here. I encourage you to go check out the MRE Code Hub and play with the search capability. And perhaps at the end, if there's a little bit more time, we can have one of the attendees who helped develop this talk a little bit more about the search functionality of the Code Hub if there's interest at the end. The last thing I wanted to talk about related to MRE software is the PRIMRE Code Catalog. The PRIMRE Code Catalog, like I said, is a searchable online discovery platform that allows users to perform faceted searches to find relevant MRE software. The primary difference here is that this includes commercial and open source codes. So it pulls in the content that was available from some of the metadata that's available from the Code Hub related to open source codes, but it also allows users to submit commercial software as well. And the intent here is to allow people to search software by licensing type. So whether you're looking for a freely available open source software, whether you're interested in a commercial package, lets you search by programming language. So if you have a preference on programming language, you can find relevant software that way, and application. So whether it's for Wave, Tidal, etc. And then, for software, especially open source software, we include the development status of that software. So whether it's ongoing or whether it's been, pretty stagnant for a while. And with that, I'm going to transition to John Weirs and David Hume, who are going to talk about the technology database.
Thanks, Kelly. This is David Hume. This is going to do a quick intro, and then John's going to do a live demo for you all. So the MHK Technology Database is a reboot of prior efforts over the years to create a single database that identifies all marine energy companies, technologies, and projects. This effort stems from a basic and common question that many government funding agencies and investors like to ask. That is, what does the marine energy landscape look like? People want to know about all the different technologies, where they are in the world, their state of maturity, or what design archetypes the sector might be trending towards. These are all fantastic questions, but historically have been very difficult to answer since the information was scattered and often way out of date. This database is a first step towards compiling the information needed to address those questions. With these data, we can tease out useful insights about the marine energy sector, such as what are the most common design archetypes? Across all the technologies, what is the average power rating for tidal devices in comparison to wave? Where have the technologies been deployed geographically? And perhaps where in the water column are wave energy converters most typically installed? These are just some of the questions we can start to answer with this data set. These data were collected over the course of about a year and represents a first pass at identifying all the different companies, technologies, and projects. It's not perfect, but this is where community participation is crucial. As John will describe, the database can be updated by anyone. Our team will be doing annual updates of the data, but we strongly encourage you to go into the database and update the information as you can to ensure that it is accurate. With that, I'll pass over to John to do a live demo and describe the database in more detail.
Thanks, David. I'm going to go ahead and try and share my screen here, but I need Kelly to stop sharing. Thanks, Kelly. Go ahead and share my screen. All right, should be able to see my screen. So this is the technology database. It's basically split into 4 categories for projects, devices, technologies, and organizations. And I apologize about the background noise. I'm in a shared office space, so some talking in the background. The reason we're storing this in the wiki is twofold. One, this is in PRIMRE's wiki place, and we're storing it there because one, like David said, we want this to be a living, breathing database that the community can go in and edit freely to keep things up to date. The other thing is we're taking full advantage of the semantic data relationships in the database itself. So what that means is, we can pop in here to view, I'll just click the first thing on that page, 40 South Energy, this particular company. The semantic relationship with it behind the wiki lets us add, whatever wiki content we want to this little stub of a page, but also behind the scenes is storing the relationships between the different technologies and projects involved with that company. So you can see that it's involved in this particular project and these 2 different devices. And so we can hop over to like this device and see that associated with the different projects from Skilly Airport, and you can pop over there and see the devices associated with that as well. And you'll notice we're sort of jumping around through different navigations with the database. And so the technology database itself, let me just, at any time we can go back up and see the main search where we can search for different components, like we'll go for like the open center turbine and pop in there and see, you know, its water column position, estimated TRL, and of course all the different projects that are using this particular device. And so this kind of gives you an idea of the circular relationships associated with this tool and how we can bounce from one to the other and sort of explore through the data and see all the different devices, projects, technologies, and organizations operating in the MRE sector. There's a lot of other information that we're storing as well, and we're still in the process of bringing these types of information up to the surface. So this is just the very beginning of the technology database. Our plan includes bubbling some of that information up into larger dashboards. Right now we just have essentially rudimentary lists of each of these things, so lists of devices and technologies. But yeah, eventually we're going to be pulling these into dashboards with graphical, a little bit more of a graphical presentation of the information, and so it should be a lot more interesting to browse. But the information's there, and you can definitely hop through and check it out. So here's an example of where we're headed with the home page. So you can see maps of projects by location or devices broken down by technology or a number of different potential summaries of the information. So that's the plan and the technology database. Are there any questions?
Hi, John. There's no questions right now, so we'll come back after the next presentation.
Great, thanks.
Rick, do you want to go ahead and start sharing your screen?
I can. I thought Kelly was going to share the introduction slide. I'm happy to do that too.
I can share my screen. My apologies, I was muted. All right, there you go.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. So Telesto was recently stood up, I guess, a couple months ago, and it's still in its development phase. But it's intended to be a knowledge base to share information and knowledge collected, and how to about field and laboratory testing, measurement, how to make these measurements and stuff, and process the data. And this really got its genesis back in an instrumentation workshop back in, I guess it was 2017. And there's been a lot of tests that have been performed and a lot of knowledge gained, but that information just really isn't being disseminated. So as new tests are being performed, new people are coming into the field, they're having to start from scratch in many cases. And as anybody who's been in the field, for a while knows that, test information and stuff is really, disparate and hard to find. And you can spend hours just trying to, find information about a certain test or identify a certain instrument. And so there really was a need to bring all of, what we know under one umbrella and bring some tools that will help folks going out and doing these laboratory and field testing and validation activities to quickly get the information they need and to, help them succeed. We call this Telesto. It's one of the, I believe, Greek gods, and we like the translation to success because that's really the premise. Is we want to provide all this information to help testing activities succeed. And the other really cool thing is it's one of the 3,000 daughters of Tethys. So really its purpose is to share knowledge and information to increase the success of laboratory and field testing. And we split this into two areas, testing knowledge bases, and these are the MHK instrumentation and sensor database and the test facility database, and I'll jump into those in a little bit more detail, and some online wikis. And part of the recommendations that came from that instrumentation workshop in 2017 was to write some documents that capture the knowledge from the national labs. And we did that, and then we thought, why do we want to create static documents that are often hard to find, even with Tethys engineering and stuff? You have to know what to look for and that it exists. So instead, much like Dave Hume was describing for the technology database, we want to have a living and open information stores instead of some static documentation where everybody can contribute to, and it advances and adapts as knowledge and stuff is gained. So with that, Kelly, if you could stop sharing, and I'll try and give you a live demo. All right. Hey, Kelly, could you let me know when you can see my screen?
I can see it.
Okay, perfect. So I've already preloaded some of these landing pages simply to avoid any issues and stuff. But as you can see, this is a list of the PRIMRE Knowledge Hub. Telesto sits here beside MRE Software. And if you click that, it'll take you to that landing page that I had just showed you, where you have the two knowledge bases and the testing and measurement wiki below that. I just want to jump quickly in and talk a little bit about these testing knowledge bases. These were tools that were set up some time ago and unfortunately have fallen out of disuse, but I think are extremely relevant in today's, in a lot of stuff that's going on today. If you click on this instrumentation and sensor database, it's its own tool, and it's designed to quickly allow you to, through either a faceted search by clicking one of the, or selecting several of these items on one side, or doing a keyword search up top, locate an instrument or a set of instruments that might help you. At the very least, you'll identify manufacturers. But as you can see, some of these links are now, broken, and we need to perhaps update the some of the facets and stuff. But this is something that you as a user can come and enter information. And if I was to click this Argonaut XR, it would, maybe I just need to click it, and I'll show you what comes out. There it goes. It provides information on the instrument, what it does, what it can be used for. You have spec sheets. In this case, it has no description available. What it measures, 3D velocity, pressure, so forth. Optional sensors, guides and manuals. So if you happen to own one and you lost your manual, quickly where to find it and stuff. And one of the things is user experiences. This is one thing I wanted to highlight. This is an opportunity for us to provide, hey, what worked well, what didn't work well with this instrument to help future deployments. So that's the instrumentation database. Then there's the test facility database, with these programs like PRIMRE going on, or if you just want to, quickly find a test facility to do some testing. This was something that was set up quite a while ago, and it's really a list of test facilities that are out there in the U.S. Maybe we could expand this to the, to the rest of the world, and maybe we can even add some faceted search. So you can quickly say, well, I want a wave flume, or no, I want, a cavitation tunnel or something like that. And you can click that, but would appreciate feedback and stuff. So as we move forward, we're going to update these two knowledge bases, and so how we can improve these and add content to make them more useful to you. With that said, I'm going to move on to the testing and measurement guidance, because there's a lot of information here that I'm having to cover in a short period of time. Sorry, let me click. Okay, I shouldn't have said it. So there's 4 areas that these wikis are in. That's MRE Testing, which really describes what testing is, what are different types of tests, and I'll show that in a second. Then there's MRE Measurement, which is really how do you make these measurements, what instruments do we typically use, how do we install them, and such. There's MRE Data, which we haven't developed yet. It's just a placeholder right now. And then finally, the last one is Regulation, Standards, Guidelines, and Certification, because as you go in, into this field, we've done a wonderful job at developing standards. There's a lot of regulations that define our activities, but what's the difference between them and what are they all? And this provides sort of a guidance through explaining what each one of these are and how they apply to primarily to field testing, and then what standards and guidelines exist, and also talks about the certification process. So you've probably heard that, but how do what's the difference between, like, for example, a type certification and a project certification? So it provides the guidance there that we feel is really missing out there to understand sort of that whole framework that you have to operate in. So if we click onto the MRE testing, you go into this page, and again, we're still adding content, so it's still fairly new, but provides an overview, describes how to do some test plans, talks about stability seakeeping, power testing, mooring, and eventually we want to add a bunch more, because there's like mechanical loads testing and several other categories. And just as a quick example, here's what you see under power testing. You have a side navigation bar that talks, provides a high-level overview, talks about power performance. What is that? References for the various standards for both, the testing, but as well as, instrument requirements and such. And then in this case, it goes specifically into wet power performance testing. And what's really cool is it provides a link here to MHKit for codes to actually process the data in a way that's compliant with the IEC standards. And then down here is power quality. And you can quickly use this navigation bar to get there. Again, includes the necessary references, why you're doing it, and so forth. So provides all that background information. So if somebody, comes new into the field and says, hey, I want to test my device, and they might not be thinking about all the information that they can gain that'll help them in their future steps. A lot of that, they can say, well, hey, I never thought about a stability and seakeeping test. Hey, that makes sense. It can really help me. How do I do it? And provide that information. Moving on to the measurement side quickly, you can see we have all sorts of wikis for mechanical loads, motion measurement, EMI, noise protection, how to install, or what are strain gauges, how to install strain gauges, and mid-ocean measurements. And I'm just going to end by going into signal protection in a high EMI environment. That's a real common mistake we see out there. We see people running analog signals right beside high voltage signals, and it's really an art. And there's a lot of knowledge and stuff that goes into it, but we tried to quickly summarize some of the considerations. For example, what is EMI? How do you select an instrument that will perform well in a high EMI environment? Talk about grounding and shielding, tricks and tips for wiring enclosures with pictures and examples and stuff. So in some ways, step-by-step guidance. But other of these wikis have more detailed descriptions about the sensors, where you should place them, what sample rates you should use, and such. So, so just to kind of end with, this is just trying to collect all this knowledge and information and that's being gained out there and put it into one place. So all future projects can come and benefit. And I would ask you to please look through there. Please contribute to it. So if you have some specific case or some specific sensor that really worked well, or maybe even didn't work well, or some ways of doing things, please look here. And if it's not there, please add to it. We've included, I don't think at the end of this, but in many of these cases we have lessons learned. So if you have a lesson learned specific, and I don't know, maybe I should go back and find an example. Actually, no, let me go back. If I go to here, click Learn More, and if you go to the very bottom, you have a section on lessons learned. So please feel free to add some lessons learned as you guys proceed with offshore testing. That's all I have. So I'll turn it back over to Kelly.
Thank you, Rick. If you stop sharing, I'll go ahead and share my screen again. All right. Thank you so much for going over Telesto, Rick, and David, and John for going over the technology database. Since we do have a little bit of extra time, I was going to switch back to the MRE software and give a live demo with it. All right. Can one of the PRIMRE team members confirm that you can see my browser?
Yeah, all good.
Okay, thank you. All right, so here's the PRIMRE landing page. I followed what Rick did, which is preload some of the relevant content in case we have any sort of network issues. But this is the PRIMRE landing page, which we talked about before. And Rick and John have gone through and given you some nice demos of some of the knowledge hubs. So if you click on knowledge hubs, this is what you see. We talked a little bit before about the MHK data repository, TETHIS and TETHIS engineering. David and John went through the technology database, and then Rick just walked you through Telesto. I'm now going to walk you through a little bit of the resources that are available on MRE software. So as I stated before, the MRE Code Hub is this collection of open source repositories for data acquisition, data processing, visualization, simulation, and modeling, resource assessment. Really any sort of open source software that is developed through funding from the WPTO Water Power Technologies Office. So if you click on that, it takes you to this MRE Code Hub landing page, and there's a lot of wonderful resources available here. One of the things is you can actually browse the MRE Code Hub repositories. So this is that GitHub organization that I referred to previously, where we have forked in MRE software. So if you have open source software that you would like included within this Code Hub and the search capability of the Code Hub, all you need to do is fork your repository into the MRE Code Hub organization. And please contact the PRIMRE team if you would like to have your software included in there. You can see we've got the MATLAB and Python versions of MHKit, Wexen, BEM, Rosetta, the WECOP tool, Cactus, WDRT, Pecos, applications, Dolphin. So the software in here is primarily funded from WPTO, but it does include other open source software that is relevant to the industry. Going back to the landing page, there's also this option to search the MRE Code Hub source code. So let's say you wanted to find software that was written in Fortran or MATLAB. You can filter the software by its programming language. You can also filter by a specific software repository. As you can see, the software that's included in here, this list, is a direct mapping of the software that we saw in the Code Hub. That's because the search capability is actually pulling in all of the information from that Code Hub organization. You can also see the primary authors of those pieces of software. But like, let's say I wanted to look for a piece of software that I could use to calculate wave energy spectra. So I would just type in spectra, do a search, and what it'll show you is any information that is available on those repositories that's related to spectra. One of the first things we're seeing here is actually documentation from the MHKit website, the HTML file that says, okay, this is obviously a code that that talks about wave energy spectra. But if I'm looking for specific scripts, you can see, oh, there's a plot spectrum script that's included in the MHKit MATLAB repository. So if you were looking for a function to plot wave energy spectra, you could access this file here. Similarly, there's a create spectra, peak period. And so similarly, if you wanted to look for another application, you can use the search functionality, and it'll search that entire MRE Code Hub organization. We also provide a link here to register your software. You can always contact us here if you want to have your software included in the Code Hub and the search capability of the Code Hub. We also provide a link to the code catalog and back to PRIMRE. So this is an overview here of the MRE Code Hub, and at the end we'll take some questions on this. Similarly, if we navigate over to the code catalog, this is recently launched but still in development. So as you can see, we only have 3 pieces of software in here thus far, but you are always able to actually submit software to this code catalog. So we're actively adding content here, but you know, we also take user submitted information. So this is some of the faceted search that I highlighted before. You can search by licensing type, whether it's an open source software or whether it's commercial. You can find out the specific open source license, whether you're looking for a revised BSD or you want an Apache 2.0. These have direct implications to the type of private use and development that can be done within that open source license. So, you know, that might be relevant to someone in industry who wanted to take an open source code and modify it for their own needs. Similarly, we provide a filter of, you know, different programming languages. So if you are more comfortable using MATLAB, you can search programs that are written in MATLAB, etc. So I think that concludes what I wanted to go through in terms of the MRE software capabilities. Once again, this is available all on PRIMRE as a knowledge hub. We link to these resources, and you know, if you would like to contribute to the code catalog by adding software that is readily used in the MRE community, you know, your input is greatly appreciated. You know, you can also just send us the information and we will add it to the catalog. Similarly, if you have open source software that you would like to have included in the Code Hub, please let us know, and we will work to integrate and fork that repository into the MRE Code Hub and include it in the search capability. All right, and now I will switch over to Lisel and Haley.
Thank you, Katie. So just we are going to do some questions, but right before that, we would like to highlight our upcoming webinar on Wednesday, October 28th. So it will be at 8 a.m. Pacific time, 9 a.m. Mountain time, and it will be about the new features of the existing Knowledge Hub, particularly the signature projects, the thesis engineering photo library, and the aggregate search between several knowledge hubs. So please register and listen to us. And we have also an upcoming research study. In this research study, we want to interview researchers and developers to document lessons learned in the design or testing or operation and maintenance of MRE devices. And we are looking to have more people to interview. So please email Haley Force, you have our email here, if you are interested in participating in this study. And now, Haley, if we have some questions for our presenters, please.
Thanks, Lisa. So our first question is for Kelly. Can non-WPTO Water Power Technologies Office sponsored codes be placed on the Code Hub?
Yes, we do have software that is outside of WPTO funding. The intent of that Code Hub is to provide, you know, a one-stop platform to find all open source software relevant to the industry. So while we initially populated the Code Hub with MRE WPTO funded software, we are happy to include all relevant open source MRE software. And that could actually include software from relevant adjacent industries. So maybe like there's a software, an open source package that's often used for you know, oceanography or for environmental effects or for offshore wind. We were also happy to include that.
Great, thanks, Kelly. So our next question is for Rick on Telesto. How often will the guidances be updated?
Great question. I would hope regularly with community participation. We're still in the process of developing it, but I intend to you know, have fairly regular updates and additional content, probably at least, you know, twice a year is is my goal, but I think that's a great question, and we'd really love to have additional community involvement to keep it updating and continuously as new knowledge is brought forth.
Great, thank you, Rick. So our next question is, how can I find TEAMR facilities in the facilities database? So either Kelly or John would like to take that.
Sure, I can go ahead and field that question. We are actively working on integrating TEAMR facilities in the facilities database. That is under development right now, and we hope to have TEAMR facilities have their own property in the facilities database so that we can separate out TEAMR facilities from the overall facilities and also the specific capability of that facility. So TEAMR facilities, I believe they're broken into numerical modeling and simulation, flumes and basins, and I think the other category is open tests. I might have the 3 subcategories incorrect, but we will be releasing that in the near future, and we're hoping to align the launch of the TEAMR facilities in the facilities database prior to the second request for TEAMR support.
Thanks, Kelly. So we've had a few questions related to adding content to PRIMRE. So I'd like just each of the presenters maybe to highlight this again. We'll start with Kelly. How can I get software included in MRE software?
Right, so there's 2 primary mechanisms through which you can get software included in MRE software. I would say you can always contact us. That is always an option. For content on the code catalog, you can actually submit. There is an option to do user-submitted software. So if you have a commercial package that you really like to use, you can add it that way. And for open source software, you would need to submit a fork, to fork the repository into the MRE Code Hub organization. Alternatively, from the MRE Code Hub site, there is the link that provides the opportunity to request including your software there. So those are the different avenues on the MRE software side.
Great, thank you, Kelly. Can I have John discuss discuss the MRE Technology Database and how we can add content there?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. There's 2 different ways to adjust content on the MRE Technology Database. Probably the most frequent would be, seeing different relationships or adding information about devices or companies. So to modify an existing page, you can just use the 3 dots in the upper right-hand corner of any page on OpenAI. You have to be logged in, obviously. But you use those 3 dots and they open up an edit menu, and you can do the edit with form option and then just fill out the form and submit it. And then to create new content, to add a completely new device or technology, go to one of the respective pages, projects, devices, and again, sort of in the right-hand corner, there'll be an add project button. And I'm happy to show both if Kelly, if you want to stop sharing for a moment. Thanks. Let me just share my screen real quick. Okay, so here in the upper right is the 3 dots menu I was talking about. And here's the add project button. So if I wanted to add a new project, I could just click this and it will take me to a page where I type in the name of the project, and then once I have the name, it'll take me to the whole form for that particular project. And I'll just show you an existing project so you can see what that form looks like. So if I wanted to make edits to this project, come in here, edit with form. It's just going to pull everything up into a simple form. So you can see not all of the information is complete for this one, and there's more that we'd be adding. But this is the same form for editing a project as it is for creating a new project. Right? And then when you're done, you just hit save at the bottom. I'm going to hit cancel, obviously, since I'm just demoing. But that's the way to add and edit the PRIMRE Technology Database. If you have any questions or any time you need help with editing or creating content on OpenAI anywhere in the system or across PRIMRE, there's a help link at the very bottom that takes you to a page full of useful information on everything from creating a page to editing pages to you know, formatting and how to get different styles and things in the wiki, etc. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you, John. Rick, can you answer the question for Telesto, please?
Absolutely. So I guess can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Okay. Oh, hold on. I gotta hit share. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the MHK instrumentation database, and you know, there's a lot of consistency in, I guess, in between the different pages on OpenAI. But if you under PRIMRE, but if you click here for the instrumentation, you can add an instrument sensor. I think these are content that's no longer there, but you just have to click add an instrument, and then much like the page John showed, you enter the name, and then it'll expand out to the different fields. Under the test facilities database, you just hit add a test facility operator, and then again, with those fields, you fill in the fields to add the information. For Telesto, if I was to go to say mechanical loads here, this is a little more complicated because you have to actually go in, you know, click the 3 dots, click edit, and then you end up in a screen where you you know, edit the HTML or wiki text, and then in the bottom you can preview and save and such. So that's the way you would do it in Telesto. But it's more of a wiki and not a database.
Thanks, Rick. And just a reminder, you are at any time able to enter a question into the chat box. You can set that to the host or everyone if you'd like. So we have one other question. We briefly touched on some of the other knowledge bases in PRIMRE, including THESIS and THESIS engineering. How would someone provide information to those knowledge bases? And I'll ask Lyselle to answer this one.
Sure, thanks, Ellie. So very briefly, we actually can add content on THESIS and engineering by sending materials, so documents, reports, white paper, or conference paper also, to Pacific Northwest National Laboratory. So if you go to the THESIS or THESIS engineering website, you will have an email there, which is thesis@pnnl.gov, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, correct. And you can send us your documents, and we are happy to share them on THESIS engineering if it's about the engineering or the design of a device, or if it's about environmental effect, we will put it on THESIS.
Thank you. So this next question is for Rick. How does Telesto interact with the rest of PRIMRE so that I can find additional information?
Great question. Thanks for sharing that. So at this point, it's not included in the broader search, but hopefully in the near term it will be. But it has links throughout the different text. So if you wanted to see if there's a specific standard listed, you just click the text and it would take you to the site where you probably have to, in this case, purchase a standard, but guidelines in some of the open source content, you just click the links to find those. And I think I had demonstrated or showed where there was a link, I think it was the power performance, straight to the, what is that, MH kit. So you can quickly download the processing code.
Thanks, Rick. So I'm not seeing any more questions in the chat box. I'll just give one more minute if anyone would like to type something in last minute. All right, I think we're done with our questions. I'm going to go ahead and pass back to Kelly.
Thank you, Haley. Well, thank you all for attending this webinar on PRIMRE. As we said, this is the first of a two-part series, so please join the second PRIMRE webinar to learn more about the new features on PRIMRE. We would love to have your attendance. We have recorded this presentation, so we plan on posting the slides and the recording to the PRIMRE webinar series wiki page, obviously on PRIMRE. And if you have any questions about PRIMRE or any of the PRIMRE resources, please feel free to contact one of the three laboratories. We would be happy to work with you, and hopefully this was a productive and useful session for everyone who attended in terms of the new PRIMRE resources, Telesto, MRE Software, and the Technologies Database.